Well, the search continues for survivors following a series of earthquakes in western Japan. The death toll has now risen to at least 62, while dozens of people are believed to be trapped under collapsed buildings. And this as the investigation begins into how two planes collided yesterday at one of Tokyo's airports. 5 people aboard a Japanese Coast Guard aircraft were killed in that collision, while a large passenger plane burst into flames. All 379 passengers and crew on the Japan Airlines plane were able to evacuate and survived. Our Elizabeth Palmer has more.
Good morning. Well, just a short time ago, we had a little bit more information about what probably happened on that airport tarmac. Japan's transportation ministry released communications data between the two planes and air traffic control that it says shows that the little plane, the Coast Guard plane, didn't have permission to be on the runway as that huge Airbus was coming in to land. Now, I have to say that the Coast Guard pilot still insists, though, that he did have a green light to proceed. What we do know is the planes collided. Then the Japan Airlines jet sped down the runway, trailing sparks and flame. Inside the cabin, there was alarm, but no panic. A textbook evacuation got everyone out safely, all the more remarkable because some of the exits couldn't be used. Passenger Aruto Iwama said the plane shook when we landed, and in less than a minute the cabin was full of smoke, but the flight attendants quickly led us to the slides and we escaped. Today, here's what's left of the Airbus. Investigators are combing the wreckage, in part to see how the new generation carbon fiber body withstood the blaze. The inquiry now underway will examine the voice recorders from both planes and, of course, question the two main witnesses, the pilots, who are both alive. The Coast Guard plane was about to head here, stocked with supplies for the relief effort now underway in western Japan after a powerful earthquake struck on New Year's Day. The scale of the devastation is epic. This is the city of Suzu, where older buildings, not necessarily reinforced to modern earthquake-proof standards, simply collapsed. Many roads and highways are impassable, and rescuers still need to search through an overwhelming number of ruined buildings, which means an agonizing wait for survivors braced for bad news, though for some, the worst has already happened. Now, just over 2 days have passed since the earthquake struck, and since then there have been more than 200 aftershocks, which is not only traumatizing for the survivors who are stranded in the region, many of them homeless now, but also nerve-wracking for the rescue crews who are crawling around in the wreckage looking for more people.
I can only imagine, Liz. You know, Japan's prime minister has said that, this was a critical moment. That was his quote that had been reached in the search for survivors. What does he mean by that? We know that timing is incredibly important here.
Well, yes, and it's winter. It hasn't been freezing up in that area of Japan, but cold. 40 degrees, roughly, a little lower at night. But of course, if you're trapped under a building for 2 days and not able to move, you'd be suffering hypothermia by now. And I think the rescue crews are saying unless we get to them in the next, say, half a day, probably those people will die.
And in regards to this collision now between these two planes, we know from your report that those on the Japan Airlines plane, they were able to get off. But do we know anything about their condition?
14 of them were injured, but only 4 of them went to the hospital, which is extraordinary. I mean, you saw the pictures of the flames and how fast those flight attendants had to act to get, 350 people off the plane before it was engulfed in fire. The other person who is quite seriously injured is the pilot of the Coast Guard plane. Now, his 5 crew members were all killed. It's something of a miracle that he's survived, but he is going to be a key witness as the formal inquiry gets underway.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you very much.